let's talk about some of these drafts that we liked. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to go, even though I'm a Steelers fan, the Baltimore Ravens.
Hmm.
And I think you could say that a lot. I would imagine you probably think historically the Ravens do a really good job of drafting people. Eric DaCosta obviously has taken over and done a good job as well. They stockpile picks sort of like Rick Spielman does on day 3 and sometimes move around. Sometimes they just draft these guys. So this draft, they took Patrick Queen, who we talked about as being a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. J.K. Dobbins, who was off to a great start before he tore his ACL. Justin Madubuike, the interior defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. We talked about Devin Duvernay, the punt returner, who's a wide receiver at Texas. Malik Harrison, who reminds me a little bit of, well, he's more off-ball linebacker, but he's actually got more playing time than perhaps I thought he might. Tyree Phillips has got some playing time. He's since changed teams. James Prochet, who I talked about earlier, and then Geno Stone at the bottom there, the safety out of Iowa. It feels like Iowa's always producing offensive linemen and safeties, and Geno Stone was a special teamer. So just looking at the list here, and I'll ask you these questions. You can tell me what you would do now. If you're sitting there at 128, which is where Patrick Queen was drafted, would you rather have Patrick Queen if you're the Ravens, T. Higgins, or Jonathan Taylor, who there's just two names who are also available?
Well, they were able to get Dobbins in the second round, but you may have went with Taylor, not knowing that you're going to get Dobbins. The only thing about Patrick Queen, who I think is a really good linebacker when he came out, is they didn't exercise his fifth-year option,
Right.
and they ended up trading for Roquan Smith. So there's a little bit of concern there, even though they're saying the right things coming out of Baltimore about they want Patrick Queen back, but they didn't exercise a fifth-year option on him.
Why wouldn't you exercise a fifth-year option for someone with that much productivity? Do you think he wants too much money as a contract? Because you just paid Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is
traded and paid Roquan Smith. How much money are you going to, not the player as much as how much money you're going to put into that position?
The position, right. But why trade for Roquan Smith if you are saying out loud that you like Patrick Queen? You don't like him as much as you're saying?
Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking, is that one potential reason?
Well, why don't you put your GM hat on for a change, and
right.
I'm asking you that.
All right, here, I got it. Hold on.
Yeah.
I got this handy. Hopefully Brinson's still watching. I found this the other day. We made some Brinson Sucks hats a few years ago on the podcast, so that's what I'm wearing. I found it. So this will be my de facto GM hat. Yes, that means Patrick Queen's agent. We like him publicly, but we want him to do more. What maybe he doesn't get along with teammates. I don't know. Yeah, so we got Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is who we're rolling with. All right. J.K. Dobbins had the ACL. Justin Madubuike, I thought he's a pretty athletic interior defensive lineman coming out.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask you this one, and we'll get to your guys. Devin Duvernay, I mentioned, went in the late in the third round. Would you rather have Devin Duvernay, all-pro punt returner, and contributes a little bit offensively, or would you rather have Alex Highsmith? Because he was still available.
Highsmith, you got to take the pass rusher.
Okay.
For this redo thing we're doing.
Okay, fair enough. And Pete didn't even have, I'm looking at the grades here, he didn't have an A grade on what the Ravens did, but he had an A+ grade on the layup team you took, the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's because he had a love affair with Joe Burrow. I think he said Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert at different times were going to go to 25 Super Bowls. So he's got some work to do here. There's very little to complain about with this draft, right?
No. I mean, Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, they knocked it out of the park with their first two picks. And to get T. Higgins in the second round was a big get. Logan Wilson is a very good football player out of Wyoming. Davis Gather, he was out of App State. He's been a good special teamer, backup guy. Kareem actually has started some games. Again, all these guys have contributed one way or another. But probably the best guy was the Bailey, who ended up starting a lot of games for him. I think he's played in 43, started in 4 games. Another good special teamer backup. So they did a great job getting some depth that these guys, when they have to play, they can step in and they don't lose it. But they lose much from just holding the fort down to the frontliners come back. But I thought their first 2 picks were out of the park.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, the first 2 picks. T. Higgins, you probably had. Did you guys have a first round grade on him, or was he a second round pick?
We had him in the second round.
Is that
He was
because he didn't run
didn't
well?
run as well. And we had him. We thought Ayuk was a little bit more
Gotcha.
athletic than
Yeah.
Higgins was, but Higgins is a very good football player.
Yeah, Higgins is a little bigger. I only ran 4.51, I believe, but he seemed to play a little faster than that. You mentioned Logan Wilson, the linebacker out of Wyoming. Then Akeem Davis Gaither, also a linebacker. And then the Marcus Bailey pick in the 7th round, also a linebacker. I think that's one of those examples when looking back, you understand why they took 3 linebackers in the draft. But at the time, I would imagine some Bengals fans were like, why are we taking so many freaking linebackers?
Yeah, but a lot of it has to do with who's coming up. Okay. Maybe he's not going to play his rookie year, but we also have 3 backup guys that we're not going to pay uh, and let go. So you're always not only drafting for the now, but you're trying to anticipate what your roster is going to look like a year or 2 from the draft.
Right. And I think that's why, and everyone liked the Lions draft, although you said I hated it. I didn't hate the Lions draft. The Lions draft and the Seahawks draft were different than what people expected, but feel like really good drafts, especially when you talk about the first round picks. And that's Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell for Detroit, and then Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith and Jigba for Seattle. Those weren't necessarily the biggest needs for those teams, but you feel like those players can contribute right away. And if you look at it under that light, it makes a lot more sense. Also, grades that teams that drafts that Prisco liked. Good Lord, I'll get it out in a second. I mentioned the Bengals. He gave them the A+ in real time. He gave the Bears an A, and the Bears took Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson, the cornerback out of Utah. He's a good player. Travis Gibson out of Tulsa. Kendall Vildor, the cornerback out of Georgia Southern, who I like coming out a little bit. Darnell Mooney. I don't know if that's an A draft in retrospect. We'll have to look and see what Pete graded them in the redraft. And then Pete also liked the Browns. What did the Browns do? Let's see here. The Browns, Jedrick Wills, Grant Delpit hasn't worked out, the safety out of LSU just because of injuries. Jordan Elliott, the defensive tackle out of Texas. Jacob Phillips, a linebacker out of LSU. Harrison Bryant, the tight end out of Florida Atlantic. So I think the redraft probably wouldn't be quite as high. Excuse me.
Ryan, just to chime in, these are actually Prisco's redraft grades in 2023, which if that's confusing to you, take it up with Pete.
All right, that is confusing. I thought these are your initial grades. Come on, Pete.
I looked at all these teams and I was like, well, the Bengals the only one that made obvious sense to me.
Why aren't the Ravens in here? Come on, Pete. All right, then I want to go through these quickly then, because I was just giving the benefit of the doubt. He has the Colts in here as a team that got an A. Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, that makes sense. Julian Blackman, he's contributed certainly as a safety. Jacob Eason, 4th-round pick, cut. He's on his 3rd or 4th team now. And then Isaiah Rodgers and Desmond Patton as later round picks who've gotten some playing time at cornerback and wide receiver, respectively. I think Pete was probably drinking when he did this as I go through these names. And finally, the Chargers, Justin Herbert. That's a layup. And again, I apologize to Justin Herbert because I missed on him. Joshua Kelly, the running back, was in the 4th round. He hasn't gotten a lot of playing time. They continue to draft running backs with each subsequent draft. I guess you give him an A because of Justin Herbert. Kenneth Miller's been okay. He hasn't been great, or do you think has he been better than Patrick Queen? Let me ask you that.
I don't think so. I think Patrick Queen was a pretty good football player.
Yeah. Okay. So take it up with Pete if you're angry with him. If not, that's fine too. All right.